you talk a little bit more about those everyday practices of cognitive resistances that that Dr. Mills would have learned in Jamaica? How do you see like the music show up, the dance, the slang, and of course the politics? I mean, I think you touched on that a little bit more, but I'd love to hear how kind of those everyday things show up in his work.
Yeah, there's this, he wrote a whole paper on this slang concept that I'd never heard of from Jamaica called smadditizing. And it it's it's just kind of a very common kind of word that's used among, all classes of people. And the way he explains it is that it really gestures at one's status in the social world, one's subjective status in the social world, as philosophers would talk about it. So that oppression wasn't just denial of material goods. It wasn't just economic. It wasn't just about how much money or land you have. It was also about whether or not you're seen as a person in a full sense. And that's another, concept that Charles develops. It's very famous, of being a sub-person. There's persons in European modernity, and then there's sub-persons, almost persons, but not full persons. In the philosophical sense of personhood, meaning that you have the power to govern yourself, which is a very important idea in European modernity. Is self-governance is the way in which Europe overcame ideas of aristocracy and monarchy, was through ideas of self-governance. So that concept of personhood was central to political philosophy, to argue that democracy was possible, democracy was feasible, because all persons have the capacity for self-governance. We have the capacity to reflect, to not just, go for the quick outcome, but to actually, control ourselves, reflect on ourselves, and govern ourselves. And we can do this collectively, and we can do this in political form. But not everybody was seen as capable of that. So all kinds of racist ideas characterized numbers of peoples in the world as really incapable of self-governance, because they were overly emotional, because they relied on intuitions, they didn't have the intelligence, they didn't have the self-control, they didn't have the capacity for virtue. All women, mostly were put into this category. So smadditizing was this concept that was like used in slang in Jamaica, and he, really unpacked it. He really focused on it, unpacked it, and saw it as an indication of a certain knowledge and conceptualization of a kind of sub-person status, but that smadditizing was to assert one's personhood, right? It was to make visible one's full personhood as a subject with their own views and their own agency.